Welcome back, fantasy fans. It's time 60 to 41, ready to get back to this, so let's get through this list. We have no time to waste.
Thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel and making it the best it can be.
Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're enjoying this series. I'm enjoying making it. Again, just to recap, if you haven't seen, 100 through 61, there are links in the descriptions down below. There are probably going to be tags here too. If you want to check those out, check those out before getting to this video. Just wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching the channel and supporting. If you like the channel, you like my content, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to be a part of the Discord, there's a Discord link below. I do have a Patreon. You're not obliged to join the Patreon, but any support you provide is so welcome. So thank you so much for that. But let's get into this list. Number 60. All right, 60 is The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. And you got to be thinking, why is this number 60? Why is it so high? Because I think I had some other Brandon books, like Mistborn books, lower than this. And I love Mistborn Era 2. I know so many people don't like it as much as Era 1. That's totally fine. I really just dug the whole Western shoot 'em up, metal magic. Like, it was great. These buddy cop lawmen. And I really liked what he did with the mixing of the two, like, magics of Alamancy and Feruchemy. I just really enjoyed what Brandon did with these characters. I enjoyed just how smart and clever these characters had to be. And I just liked how light the book was. It's a short book. It wasn't as doom and gloom and end of the world as the first Mistborn era. And I just enjoyed it for what it was. And that's why Alloy of Law is number 60. So 59, moving on, we have The Lord of Chaos, Wheel of Time, Book 6. Man, this book is crazy good. The first 6 books of the Wheel of Time are some of the best books in all of fantasy, I think. This is my opinion, and that's why, this one is, so high, 59. It's really, really good. A lot of things happen. A lot of development happens for our main crew. The ending of this book is unbelievable. And, people start to say, oh, it's really around, like, End of Lord of Chaos where we start to get into those sloggy books. I don't think so. The thing with Jordan, I think when he hit around book 6 is he wasn't done with this world. He wanted to explore it a little bit more, flesh out these characters, flesh out these cultures. And, when people say, books 7 through 10 are a bit sloggy, like, I think it's just Jordan kind of stretching his legs and enjoying the world he's created. So I didn't mind it, but Lord of Chaos is a fantastic book. I don't really want to get into spoilers for it. No, I love it. I'm going to be doing Lord of Chaos eventually this year because I'm doing my Great Wheel of Time reread. So if you're interested in my thoughts on that, join the Discord and be a part of that discussion. So number 59, Lord of Chaos. 58, this one's going to be a surprise for some people because I've mentioned this book a few times. I read this book last year. It was like my 9th time rereading it. I don't know how many times I reread it. It's probably more than 9, but it's Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is my favorite movie of all time. One of my favorite books of all time because it's on this list. I really enjoy it. It's just so much fun. It's a really cozy book for me. I think with this book, though, I just love the beginning part. The build-up is my favorite part of the whole book, and then the rest is fine. And it's that typical kind of Crichton ending where it just ends, and you just kind of have to picture that ending yourself. But the book and the movie are very different. They're both very good, and they give me two different things. So I'm one of the people who think that the Jurassic Park movie is a better version, but it's better in a different way. It's like apples to oranges, really. But I love Jurassic Park. It's a great book. It just sparks your imagination. Crichton's always ahead with the science. I love dinosaurs. If I was to, go back and redo my education, I 100% would have gone down like the hard science paleontology route and done like a PhD in like paleontology or something like that. I mean, never say never, I guess, but I'm getting too old for school now. I've just finished my master's last year, and I told myself I'm never doing any more education, but sorry to ramble on, but Jurassic Park, 58, fantastic book. I love it. If you haven't read it, read it. It's great. All right, 57, we're at Jingo by Terry Pratchett, another Discworld book, 4th Discworld book on the City Watch. I think it's like the 21st, maybe, Discworld book. I don't know if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure it's 21st. Love Jingo. It's really good. It's a really different city watch book. Total change of pace from the other three, like Men at Arms, Guards, and Feet of Clay. You know, the City Watch are leaving. They go to Clatch because a mythical island has sprouted up in between Clatch and Ankh-Morpork, and they're going to war over it. So they're trying to fight over who really owns this land. There's some great characters in here, like I think it's like 71 Hour Ahmed. Awesome. So I just love what he did with this book. Sam Vimes out of his comfort zone. All the Watch are really out of their comfort zone. Some great moments with Veterinari and Nobby and Colon. It was a great book. I really love Jingo. That's why it's 57. It's like pretty high on this list. So yeah, Jingo, 57. Number 56 is Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. Second book in the First Law trilogy. This one's great. I really just love Abercrombie's dialogue. He's such a master at his dialogue and his double speech and the grittiness of this book. This book is has some really dark elements, and you see a lot of our characters at their lowest points, and they're going just through a lot of trauma. And the one thing I like about this book too, not every journey you go on is a success, and you can do everything right and still lose. And you can do everything wrong and win. So I really like this. This is the real Empire Strikes Back of this series, where the baddies kind of win. It's just, Sandan Glokta, all of his just chapters were riveting. He had me on the edge of a seat. I was hanging on every word. But then it went to, other characters like Logan and Giselle and Pharaoh, and they're just on this hopeless kind of quest. And it's just so much raw emotion in this book. And Abercrombie is, he's one of the best out there writing that. So, love First Law. I can't wait to get to more in this series. Such a fantastic book. So that's why it's number 56. All right, another sci-fi entry on this list, and that is number 55, which is Cibola Burns. This is the fourth book in The Expanse. I really like this one. It's such a human story. It's a very simple Expanse book, especially when you compare it to books 1 and 2. There's a lot less going on here, and it's a lot less of a mystery, but it's a very human story, and I really like that. They weren't super heavy. They didn't go super heavy on the sci-fi themes in this book. There were sci-fi themes in this book that hit pretty hard, but I just really enjoyed that they were dealing with even just natural disasters and simple things, and these colonists trying to survive now out in this wider universe. It's really good. I think all the books in the Expanse so far have been absolutely fantastic. There really isn't a bad book that I've read so far. I cannot wait to get to Nemesis Games. I can't believe I put it off so long, but if Cibola Burn is this high, I know Nemesis Games, when I do this list next year, is going to be even higher. So love this series, love this book. That's why it's number 55. All right, number 54. So we're back with Mr. John Gwynne, and that is Valor. So this is the second book in The Faithful and the Fallen, and I just love this one because there's so much development for all the characters, because John Gwynne is a very good second book author. His second book hits, I find, so much harder for me than the first. Saying that, though, Shadow of the Gods is one of the best first books I've ever read. But anyways, Valor is fantastic. Just so much development for characters that I loved in this series. Like Makeen was he's probably my favorite character in that whole series. So much development by Makeen. Just the plight of Corbin and just him dealing with some crazy revelations happen in Valor, I found. And it really wrongfoots you as the reader. And I just like how Gwynkin does that. He's a master at combat, describing combat, himself, because he does reenactments. So you just feel like you're there on the scene. It's one of my favorite series, The Faithful and the Fallen. It's only gotten better now that I've had some separation from it, and I think it is a series I could probably see myself read again. I did it all on audio, and I think I would actually just want to physically read this one, or do a physical read. I don't actually own them because I like to thrift a lot of my books, and nobody gets rid of John Gwynne books. So I'm having a hard time with that. So eventually I'll get them. But I love this series, love this book. Valor, that's why it's number 54. So 53. This is going to shock people, and why this is higher. And this one is The Lost World by Michael Crichton. And you're like, Dan, how could you put The Lost World higher than Jurassic Park? Because I think The Lost World is a better book than Jurassic Park. I love The Lost World. I think it's a much more riveting book. I think one of the things that really dragged Jurassic Park down are some of the characters. Michael Crichton's not the best character writer by any means, and he wrote children characters like Tim and Lacey. Is it Tim and Lacey? Yeah, whatever. The children in Jurassic Park aren't great. The children in Lost World, fantastic. Love both of the child characters in this. It's a very, similar thing. It's really different from the movie The Lost World, just like how Jurassic Park is different from the movie Jurassic Park. But I like this one. It's a very tight story. You have a scientist who you don't like. It's really almost opposites of Jurassic Park, where you have a scientist you don't like, and then you have with Jurassic Park you have a scientist you do like with Alan Grant. Ian Malcolm's back. Ian Malcolm's always fantastic. This one was just like, you just get a lot more dinosaur. I really liked all the dinosaurs on screen. You see some really cool dinosaurs. You see some really cool, dinosaur behavior that's described. I just really, really like this story. And like none of them are bad. And you could pick either over the other. They're so close to each other. One's 53 and the other one's 58. So they're not that far apart from each other. Lost World's great. I own both. I own both of them in Folio Society editions. Like, I love these books. Highly recommend them. If you're going to read one, go read the other two, obviously. So, obviously read Jurassic Park first before you read The Lost World. But I love it. I love that book. Number 52. This might surprise some people based on, a review I did for the third book in the series. But number 52 is Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. I really dug this book, especially because I wasn't super hot on Assassin's Apprentice. I did enjoy it. And, but this one, you really see some growth in Fitz. And I really came to empathize with Fitz a lot in this book because he's a young man. He's trying to find his way in the world where he's kind of like an orphan. But he's in a place of kind of privilege because his parents were, princelings themselves. But he's thrust into a world where he has to deal with a lot of power dynamics. He has no way of really dealing with that. And he makes a lot of mistakes. And mistakes that, if I was put in those positions, would I make the right choices too? Probably not. So, he's dealing with, just so many things like young love, first love, companionship, life, death. Like, there's so many themes that go on in this book. And, like, there's a lot that happens in this book. And I think one of the reasons why I didn't like Assassin's Quest as much is because I loved Royal Assassin so much. I really enjoyed it. I from beginning to end of that book, she had me hooked. And I just thought, Assassin's Quest was a step down in her writing, or not in her writing, but in her pacing, I would say. But Royal Assassin, holy cow, it just kept me gripped. I was invested. I was locked into the whole story. It was very emotional too. So just a great book. Really, really enjoyed my time with it. And that's why it's number 52. Yeah, it's pretty high. All right, number 51. This might shock people too, because I've never really mentioned this series on my channel. Mainly because I've kind of lost interest in the series. I don't see the series ever getting finished. And number 51 is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. So I read this book, I want to say... I read this book when I moved to England, and that was probably 7-8 years ago now. And I really enjoyed it. Both my wife and I, she read it, and she's like, you need to read this. So I picked it up. I enjoyed it. The first book's a masterpiece. Beautifully written. The story was unique, I felt. Quoth maybe not the most likable character, but I just really liked what Rothfuss did. You can see he carefully places his words. His word placement's on point. The story he was telling was just... I got sucked into this world that he made, and... when Quoth's on the streets and he's begging and I still think about this book from time to time. But it's obviously the series has gone through its rocky moments, and Rothfuss, we're still waiting for that third entry 11 years later. But wow, this book really kind of captured my imagination, captivated me when I read it. This book might fall on the list over the years, because I don't see myself rereading it unless the third book ever comes out. But other than that, it's just a great book. Like, it's still worth reading, I think, knowing that, we may never get a third entry, or we might get a third entry, but it might not live up to the hype and expectation that, people have been waiting for the last 11 years. It's still a good book. It's almost like that. It's better to try something once and, experience something once than never at all, I guess. So enjoy it for what it is. Don't get too caught up because the third book ever comes out. It's life, right? Who cares? There's other books out there to read, but I enjoyed it. Number 51, Name of the Wind. All right, halfway through the list, number 50 is The Eye of the World. First book in the Wheel of Time. This book started it all. Started me on this massive 15-book adventure, and it's one of those books too where if the series never got finished, it just got came out with book one. And it's really kind of a self-contained story. There doesn't need to be a sequel, really, but I thought it delivered everything really well. I really enjoyed my time with it. And I just love that, reluctant heroes get brought on an adventure by a wise mage and wise wizard. And off they go on an adventure that is going to change them by the end. I love it. It's a great story. Recently reread Eye of the World this past January. Loved it just as much as I've read it the other 2 times I've read it. It's The Wheel of Time is probably the best coming of age story I've ever read. To see where these characters begin and where they end, and this book started it all. I know a lot of people gripe and say, "Oh, there's a lot of Tolkien themes," but yeah, to get published at this time when Robert Jordan was writing, you kind of had to have some Tolkien themes in there, and then eventually with book 2 it becomes its own thing, and I love that Robert Jordan did that. So Eye of the World, it's a fantastic book. If you haven't read Wheel of Time, you should read Wheel of Time. I'm not saying you should. If you read what you want to read, but this is one of my favorite books, and I love it. Number 50, The Eye of the World. All right, number 49 is Reaper Man. So this is the second book in the Death series by Terry Pratchett, right after Mort. It's a really good book, really philosophical, as all Discworld books are, very philosophical. Death has to take, his death's kind of forced into early retirement, and he's no longer wearing the mantle of death, so he becomes a farmer. And obviously when death takes a holiday, death stops happening, and people who should have died don't die. And then that kind of brings us on the story of the wizard Wendell Poons, who's a very old wizard, and he should have died, and he didn't, because death wasn't there to greet him, because as a wizard, death has to be there. And this one just, again, very philosophical, some unbelievable themes that Terry kind of touches on. This book really challenged me as a reader, and I felt that when I read it, I didn't think I liked it. And then the more I thought about it, this is a book I thought about for days after I read it. And it took me days to digest it. And once it really kind of solidified it in my mind, this book was an absolute masterpiece. It's one of his best books, one of my favorite Discworld books. It's number 49 on the list here too. So number 49, Reaper Man. Read it. It's fantastic. All right, number 48, back with John Gwynne again, and this is Ruin. So this is the third book in the Faithful of the Fallen. Ruin and Valor really have kind of blurred together. I remember I liked Ruin a little bit better just because some of the payoffs that happened in Ruin, some more development of these characters that I really, really like. And, just following on with that theme, that I really liked where all the characters were at in Ruin. I think Wrath kind of set me back for some of these characters, but Ruin, I really liked where every character was at. I just really liked Corbin. This is the book where I thought, Corbin's my man. He's also one of the best animal companions in a story, too, with Storm. Again, Mackine is awesome. You see him with a burgeoning relationship. And just the stakes just got higher. Everything's just super tense. And, some of the bad guys are, starting to get, powerful. And it's a real, turning point I felt in the series with Ruin. I really enjoyed it. The audio narration I did was just great. Again, just kind of like Valor, I really want to reread it and just dive back. It's not going to be for a while. Like, probably give it some time. But yeah, The Faithful and the Fallen, it's just a great series because it's stuff I like in fantasy, like mythical weapons, like on the hunt for these hidden mythical items, great combat, and yeah, it's awesome. It's really, really good. So highly recommend it, and that's why it's number 48. Okay, so there's going to be a lot more Wheel of Time and other series I've kind of mentioned coming up on this list. So number 47 is The Gathering Storm. So this is the first book by Brandon Sanderson after the death of Robert Jordan. And this one's really good. Like, there's some characters fell off, like not terribly off, not like super noticeable, where, you know, you got to give Brandon a little bit of credit, give him a little bit of slack to picking up a series after an author has passed away who'd written 11 books, who was an influence on him as an author too. That's hard. That's hard for anyone, and I think Brandon really knocked it out of the park. And what he did in this book was fantastic. Some great development and just great moments for characters I typically don't like. I'm not a big Egwene fan, and this was really Egwene's like swan song book. There's some fantastic moments in this book. It's one of those too that it really, you know, you're coming to the end of this series, and I think this book, you really start to feel that, you know, we're getting to that last battle. And, you know, true to the name, like The Gathering Storm, like, yeah, like the storm is coming, right? And you really feel it in this book. Everything just kind of gets dialed up to 11. And it's great entry by Brandon Sanderson. I think he did a fantastic job with the last few books in the series. So, yeah, The Gathering Storm, number 47. 46 is The Blade itself. Another Joe Abercrombie. Pretty high on the list. Love Joe. This book's awesome. This book is so much fun. I had so many laughs in this book too. Like, he's just so funny as well. Joe Abercrombie, like, he can just make you laugh. And I just really liked, you know, the characters interacting in the capital city, where they're walking around the slums. They're kind of, you know, peeling people off the dregs of society. And you have this wonderful world he establishes with these characters who you shouldn't like, but you do. Like, Glokta is a monster, but he's a monster because of the situation he's in, where he's crippled, and he was a former champion, like a beautiful person, maybe not like internally beautiful, more externally beautiful, and yeah, he's kind of dealing with that trauma, and he's taking it out on others, and he's just written so well, because even though he was a jerk when he was you know, a pretty boy, but he's smart. He's so smart, and he's definitely the smartest person in the room, and you're in this guy's head, and Joe writes him so well. Giselle Dan Luthar is not like my favorite character in the series as a whole. You kind of want to, you're just waiting to see him get humbled, right? In this whole book, so you're looking forward to that. And then just Logan Ninefingers, it's just a great character. He's just like that brute barbarian, like trying to change his stars, but knows he probably can't really walk away from it. And it's just a brutal world. Like, everything feels dark and grim, and like, this book is a mood. Like, The Blade itself is a total mood. So I love it. Yeah, that's why it's number like 46 in this list. Very high up. Love Joe Abercrombie. Can't wait to read like the standalone, like the Great Leveler series. I'm gonna be hopefully getting to that this year. So those will probably be on this list next year. So number 45. This is gonna be the last Jordan entry, at least on this list, up till 41. And yeah, wow, The Dragon Reborn. I'm rereading that book this month, in the month of March. Love The Dragon Reborn. It's such a different book too from what we have with book 1 and book 2, where book 1 is kind of like that Tolkien, very similar to Tolkien, where your reluctant heroes going on adventure. Book 2 is all about the development of Rand, and getting you on Rand's side and enjoying him as a character. And book 3 is just like break the mold, like we're totally different. And I love that. I love that he was able to get me in the heads of these other characters like Perrin and Mat, and really get me to enjoy those characters even more. Because you hadn't really been in the head of Perrin and Mat. I don't think you've ever been in the head of Mat up until this book. And this is the book where, you know, things started to turn around for me for certain characters. And I just like how everything kind of came together in the end with this book, where, you know, everything's kind of operating on this. The book's called The Dragon Reborn, for crying out loud. So we're all trying to, all the characters are trying to kind of deal with this situation that is the Dragon Reborn. Either this character is or they aren't, and they're gonna have to prove it. And I love it. It's so good. It's definitely a different Wheel of Time book. It's probably not the best Wheel of Time book, that's for sure. There's more Wheel of Time on this list, I can tell you right now. But God, this book is great. Better than obviously the other books I've said before, Lord of Chaos and Gathering Storm. I just like the development that happened with Perrin in this book. I really like Perrin. You meet one of my favorite characters in all of Wheel of Time, which is Gaul, the Aielman. So yeah, Dragon Reborn, number 45, fantastic book. So good. 44, more Pratchett. You knew Pratchett was going to be on here a lot. He's always going to be on here. So 44 is Small God. So this is a standalone book by Terry Pratchett. This is really, you're following a monk, Brother, who is he's a worshiper of Om, who is a very militaristic god, and you're the believers of Om have, they convert people to Om very violently. It's a very violent religion with a lot of kind of backstabbing and machinations to the top of that priestly pillar. And you see where Brother meets a tortoise who claims to be the great and powerful god Om. So this book is just a really philosophical exploration of belief and what it means to believe in an afterlife, believe in a god, and how like religious texts are written and how they should be written and how they should be believed, and just how simple people can make a massive difference in the world, and even just the massive difference in one person's life. So Terry Pratchett again with these big themes. It's just, this book has layers to it. I've read this book, probably one of the Discworld books I've read the most, besides Weird Sisters. I think I've read it 2 or 3 times now. And every time I pull something out of it that's very different, and something very different hits with me each time. But I love it. This is one of those books that I will reread for the rest of my life. It's a small book. It's a very simple read, but it just has so many deep themes and moments in it that stand out to me, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's wickedly funny too. So yeah, Small Gods, Terry Pratchett, number 44. This is going to be a series probably most people have never heard of before. Number 43, it's called Guardians of the Keep. It's by Carol Berg. It's in the Bridge of Darnath series. I believe it's the second book in that series. You're following the adventures of Suri. She is a main character. She's the main character. She's a heroine in this book. And, it's a few years later from the first book, and her son has been kidnapped, and she and her husband, Donathiel, have to go and get him back. But her son has been captured by the baddies, who are essentially training him up to be one of them. So this is a crazy book, and it's actually been quite a few years since I read it. It's probably at least 8-9 years since I read it, and it's still kind of stuck with me. Like, I don't remember every part of the book, but I remember how emotional and how much emotional I was with this book, and how it really just held me into the series. And it was one of those books I just flew through. And I really enjoy Carol Berg as a writer. This series, it was a trilogy originally, and then she wrote a 4th book like several years later. But this book is by far the best in the series. None of the other books are going to be on this list. But Guardians of the Keep, great book. And the thing is, if you haven't heard of this series, or if you're out thrifting and you find like the Bridge of Darnath series, I think the first book's called Son of Avanar. Pick it up, give it a shot. Like, it might not blow your mind, or it might not be one of the best series you ever read. And you know what? Not every fantasy series has to be the best series you've ever read. This book is just good. It delivers on everything I want. It has a great female protagonist, some great magic, some great dual worlds kind of happening in this, and I love it. When I read this, I was really hooked into this story, and I need to read it again. And the thing is, I don't own these anymore because I brought them with me when I moved to England, and then I left them with my aunt. I'm like, yeah, these are great, you'll love them. And now I'm kicking myself because I'm like, oh, I wish I had those again, because those are great books. So yeah, Guardians of the Keep, I love it. Fantastic book. If you see this series, pick it up, give it a shot. Bridge of Darnath, Son of Avanar, first book too. Alright guys, we're almost there. 2 more books left. The 43rd book on this list is Salem's Lot. So I read Salem's Lot last year in October. I read it when I was on my trip to Alaska. I did an Alaskan cruise with my wife last year. Best trip I've ever done, but this is an amazing book. Holy cow. I'm not a huge Stephen King fan. Not because I don't like his books, I just haven't read a lot of Stephen King yet. And this is such a simple story. It's just a simple premise of this guy coming back to his roots to write a book. And he stumbles on a den of vampires. And like by no fault of his own, right? It's so good. It's so emotionally charged. And for such a simple story, I was invested in the lives of all these characters like Susan and Ben and just... it's so, for such a simple book, it just delivers on everything. I loved all the characters. I think it was like one of the priests, Callahan. He was great. It's a very emotional story. Like, I don't think it ends perfectly. The ending is probably the weakest part of this book, but everything up to the ending was fantastic. And I remember like reading this book on the cruise ship. And because there was days when we were at sea and you couldn't see too much, so I was like, I gotta just devour this book, and I did. I loved every minute of it, and it's such a fantastic book. This is why it's so high, and like I didn't expect to have a Stephen King book this high. And yeah, so number 43 is Salem's Lot. All right, guys, we've made it 41. And this is my favorite book so far in The Expanse, and that is Caliban's War, Book 2. So what I love about Caliban's War are the POVs. The addition of Avasarala and Bobby. Oh, these characters are awesome. I really hope they come back, because I want to have more Bobby and Avasarala in my life. I loved Avasarala. She's just this quippy, witty, doesn't take shit from anyone, older lady, and she's going to say what she's going to say. She's going to have her piece, and she's going to just lay it all on the line. She's a clever politician. Bobby, she's this hulk of a woman, a Marine. She's a Martian, and, they're dealing with this conflict between, Earth and Mars. And, she's a very simple character, and she sees things through a simple lens. And, she sees that there's a common enemy here that, Earth and Mars have to unite against, because this is going to be a problem. And I like that. I like Bobby. There was another character, I forget his name now. He was a scientist, like a botanist, I believed, or something like that. He was okay. A little bit whiny. Holden's okay. Holden's just typical Holden, holier than thou. Kind of honorable fool. But it was really like Bobby and Avasarala that I just loved in this series, in this book particularly, and they were what held me through. And the ending in this book is awesome. The ending of Caliban's War is like punchy as heck. A lot of crazy stuff happens. Holden does his hero stuff at the end of the book. I did like that too. So I don't hate Holden. I just, he's not my favorite. But Avasarala and Bobby were the standouts, and this book really kind of cemented that. Wow, this series, The Expanse, is something different. And it's something I need to pay attention to, and I love it. So, yeah, guys, that's number 41. Cannot wait to get to the next. We're getting there. Top 40 books. Like, there's some pretty good books in there. These are all great books that I talked about today. These are all, some of these books are on some of the best fantasy lists of all time. And, it's hard to rank any book. Because books, at least for me, is, you have a mood. You're in a mood when you read a book, and some books hit different at the time you read them, and, it depends on the headspace you're in, right? And, a book might go from a 4 to a 5 stars really easily based on, your mood that day and when you finish it. So, and, people attach a lot of nostalgia to books, especially I do. I find I have a very vivid image of a book I really enjoy, where I was when I finished it, the feeling, the ambiance I kind of had. So, but these are all fantastic books. I hope you guys have read them. Comment down below on any of the books I've listed, where they would fall maybe on your list. You don't have to list them all. There's a lot here. There's 20 books, but again, Thank you guys for checking out the channel. Thank you for sticking up. Thank you for sticking around for this, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.